So bottom line, the issue is opposite of online politics has necessarily jumpstart think about punishers. They were always the last step before checkout for online so if you decide to click on that link in this video,
I would like to remind you to watch TikTok instead of this show because you're not going to understand anything anyway. And because now we have a mic and good lighting, this is not a comedy show anymore, and it's a very serious politics and economics critique channel. Did you know that there is a website where a woman sells a course on how to dance with your dog? And she has clients in Canada, in Japan, in Europe, and all over the world. She has clients. And I know that because I saw an ad for her course, and she seems to be doing pretty well. Course, how to dance with your dog. And there's multiple different style of dance that you can do. She says you can dance like a ballet dance. You can do hip hop. Anyways, go check her website somewhere. And I saw that ad because the algorithm that feeds me these ads think that I'm interested in dog dancing classes for some reason. Probably they think that I have a dog. And to be fair, by the ads that I am served, the algorithm seems to think that I am a dog owner, for one, but I don't have a dog. I constantly see these organic farm food for dogs. Food for dogs, I think it's called. And the interesting part is the meal, each meal for these dogs from these farmers is cost about $20. And to be fair, it is significantly more expensive than my meals. So I'm not sure why would they think that even if I had a dog, I could afford a $35 meal for my dog. But apparently people treat the dogs that way. And it makes me kind of sad because my meals are about $5. A lot of dogs in the United States, they eat better than me. And I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing. But I'm happy that dogs are happy. On the same note, algorithm seems to think that I am a Latin American or Mexican dad, and I have 2 children because I constantly see these promotions for some, like, do you want to be a great dad for your 2 Mexican children or Latin children? And it's very specific. Like, they promote the courses where, like, they want me to bring my kids to some kind of educational center where they will teach my kids about their Latin American or Mexican heritage. So that's what algorithm thinks of me. And I think it's kind of funny because sometimes I deliberately confuse the algorithm. I just watch random things just so I click on random things and I watch certain things just so the algorithm thinks that I'm something that I'm not. Because it makes me feel good to confuse the tech people who make money off of ads. But let's go somewhere else. Today we're going to talk about the America and its problems, which is my favorite topic because there's a lot and I know them all. For example, a lot of people talk about income inequality in the United States. Income inequality is the biggest problem that we all have to fight. We don't know how to solve this issue, but there's a big problem, income inequality. And I just want to, and everybody's like agreeing, yeah, that's a big problem. And if you think that income inequality in the United States is a big problem, you're completely missing the point. About 10% of top earners in the United States, I'm going to slow down because there's going to be a lot of information. 10%, top 10% of American earners make about 45% of all income. And if you think that is bad, that the top 10% make almost half of what everybody else is making, that might seem bad. But then wait until I tell you about something that is really important, which is wealth inequality gap. So we already know that 10% of top earners make 45% of income, and if we can kind of squint our eyes and make the eyebrows like this and say, no, this is bad. But at the same time, in America, 1%, not 10, 1% of the top wealthiest people, it seems like I have to educate you on the difference between wealth and income because you guys don't have the majors in economics, but that's fine. That's why I'm here. 1% of top wealth earners owns 30% of all wealth. So when the 10% of top earners make 45% of all income, 1% of owners possess 30% of all wealth. And that's called wealth gap. And they're hiding behind the earnings reports, which they're not doing. And if you think that's bad, the top 10% of wealth holders hold about 70% of all of the American wealth. So that is the difference right there between the earned income inequality and owners' wealth inequality. So if you're talking about income inequality, I don't know what you're doing. You're not making any sense, and nobody cares. You're just diverging. You're just diverging. Those things don't matter. Income doesn't matter in this country. But let me tell you this. You might say that 10% of top wealth holders have 70% of all wealth in America. This is outrageous. But wait until I tell you about India. In India, 1% of the wealthiest people own 70% of all wealth. I mean, I know there's not a lot there. But just imagine the disparity. Right? You're talking about the income inequality, which is just 10% make half. I'm talking about wealth inequality when 10% own twice as that, 70%. But in India, just 1%, not 10%, 1% owns 60% of all wealth in America. If this is too hard for you to understand, if you're just coming from TikTok, or you're kind of in that kind of mind space where like real information just skips over your head, let me just translate it to you in TikTok terms, okay? What I'm trying to say is, imagine apples, and everybody has apples. And so what I'm trying to say here is, in America, 10% of the richest apple farmers, apple holders, apple gatherers, they own 10 people out of 100. Out of 100, 10 people have 70 apples. Right? And that's crazy. Because the rest 90 people have 30 apples. In India, one person out of 100 has 70 apples. And for the rest 99 people, there is only 40 apples left in India. But at the same time, I'm thinking, it's not that bad. It is not that bad, even in India. In America, where there's 10 people have 70 apples and all the rest 90 people have 30 apples, and in India one person has 60 apples and 99 people have 40 apples to share and to cut into apple meals. At the same time, I'm thinking, it could be much worse. It could be that one person in America had 99 apples, 98 apples. And all the rest 99 people would have one apple to share. That would be worse. So in a way, I feel like we must be kind of grateful. We must be grateful that in America, 90% of bottom earners have at least 30 apples to share, because it could be much worse. So we are thankful on this channel that those people don't take all of the apples, because I feel like they could. So I'm happy that they don't. So, but the wealth inequality is a real issue, and we can go even further. We can do even better here. We can talk about something called leveraging assets, which is a concept where people have those apples and they leverage them to take equity loans. And you can just live off the equity loans, and you don't have to make income at all. And that's basically how people with wealth hide behind the wealth and not reporting the wealth that they have, because they don't have no income. They just have, let's say you have $1 million worth of a house, which they have much more than that. But let's just say, on the level that we can understand, you have $1 million worth of a house and you have zero income. You just take $1 million in loans and you just live off of that. And you have zero income and you don't have to pay taxes. So that is the concept of leveraging assets, where people live off loans without paying any taxes because they don't have any income. And the crazy part is, if you have $1 million worth of asset that you can take out a loan, that doesn't matter. Because if you have billions of dollars, like a lot of these people do, you can take loans against your assets at much lower rate. Not just than everybody else, but much lower rate. So the rate could be, if you have a lot of assets and you want to take an equity loan, the loan would be about 3 to 5%. That could be even lower. That's just what I know. It could be 3-5% annual percentage rate. And here's an interesting part. In the market, in the capital markets today, you can make about 8 to 15% moderately per year. So if you have enough assets and you can take out loans at about 3 to 5%, and you just have that work and you don't have any income anyways, all of that is just your money, and you put that in the market at about 8 to 15% of income, then you generate all the rest of your money, you cover your interest, and you just have free income without ever paying taxes for any of that. At the same time, you accumulate wealth. You keep accumulating wealth. Because when you take $1 billion at 3 to 5% and you make 8 to 10% or 15% per year, there's enough money for you to live off, and you don't have to pay taxes because that's not income. And then you reinvest the rest of your money into generating even more wealth, so then you can borrow even more because now you have more equity. But that's not all of the fun of the wealthy, how the wealthy people get by in this country, how they not pay anything to anyone. There's also something called a step up in basis, and that's very interesting. So not only you can just have a lot of assets, take loans, live off of that, never pay taxes, and just accumulate wealth, what you can also do is when you transfer. So this is essentially a wealth transfer loophole in this economy, in this country, where people. Okay, let me just simplify this a little bit. Let's say you bought a house for $1 million, and then you die in 70 years, and now your house is worth $30 million. So if you sell the house, you owe the government a taxes on $29 million. The difference. But the interesting thing is, if you transfer that asset, that house, to your heirs, it's called an inheritance transfer, asset transfer. So that thing triggers the step up in basis procedure, which means that it just resets the capital gains on that house. In other words, if some person bought a house for $1 million and then when he dies, he's going to pass it on to the other generations, and now that house is $30 million, the person who receives the house, if they're going to sell it that day for $30 million, the house that was bought for $1 million, they're not going to pay taxes because of something called step up in basis. And what all of this means and how the wealth gap in this country is created is people buy assets like a house, maybe $1 million, maybe $10 million, a long time ago, and then they take the loan against that house for 3 to 5% of APR. Then they go into the market, and with that loan, they make 10 to 15% income, pocketing all of the rest minus interest rate, just pocketing. And then their assets grow in price, and they just leave this all to their families. And now the families have this house, which is now 30 times more money. So basically, people with money take loans, make a lot more money, pass it down to the generations, and the generation that received all of that don't have to pay any taxes. Long story short, okay? So if you think about income inequality in the United States today, you're a dummy. You don't know anything about anything, because the real issue is how wealth is generated, multiplied, deferred from taxes, and passed down to generations, and they just keep going. And that's why you can't buy a couch. And now here's something I want to talk about regarding the American corporations. And I really can't believe how stupid the American corporations are internationally. 40 to 50 years ago, they just decided that they're going to work with China to make money in China because China was on the rise. So what they did is they let them steal all of the Western technologies for 30 to 40 years and now wonder, why are they kind of losing the influence around the world? Why Chinese are out competing them? They wonder, how did it happen, even though they just let them take all of their technology for 30 years, thinking that they were making money, and they did in the short term. But how stupid that is. How stupid that is to just let China steal all the proprietary technology and think that nothing's going to happen. And it's not even a secret in China. It's not even a secret. If you go to Shanghai, to the Museum of the Communist Party in Xintiandi, which is the very nice neighborhood in Shanghai, Xintiandi, there's a museum of Communist Party. And then when you enter this museum, there's a big quote on the wall by Deng Xiaoping. And it says, and I quote, we're going to steal and copy our way into prosperity. And our Western investors will help us do that. And we're going to do that because there is no shame in that. And our priority is bringing prosperity to China. And so they did that. And so they stole for 30 years. And then applied a market control and government subsidies to outcompete these dummies, American corporations, such as Tesla, such as Hewlett Packard, such as Apple, such as whoever was working in China for 30 years thinking that they're making money. Now China has all their technology and they don't even care. They don't even care. Because they said that in Shanghai Museum of Communist Party in Xintiandi neighborhood, and when you come in, it says we're going to steal and copy our way into prosperity. They say in America that we're gonna have a policy, and in Europe also we're gonna have a policy of no ICE cars by 2035, and that's amazing. That's great. Do you know why? Do you know what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen is there's gonna be no ICE cars in 2040, and there's also gonna be no electric cars because there's no electric infrastructure to substitute all of the people who don't have ICE cars no more. And so the electric cars would be reserved to people who have a house, who can afford to charge that thing. And even though they could, probably they wouldn't be able to charge them all at once because there's just no enough electricity generation to support all of that. So I would say some of the rich people would have amazing electric cars in this country. And all the rest, all the poor people, will be just forced into underdeveloped public transportation in the United States. And basically it's going to look like a third world country. It's going to look exactly like third world country because a lot of people will have no cars because electric cars can only support a few who can afford it. And there's no ICE cars. And so all of the rest of the people would be forced onto these buses that are really undeveloped. There's not really a lot of public transportation in American society, and nobody's going to invest in that. Nobody's going to do anything. So people are just going to be, it's just basically going to be a third world country. And you know how I know that? Do you know how I know that? Because in Ukraine, we have, I'm not sure what they have now, but we had for many years, we had a similar policy of no ICE cars. But also there was no electric cars. So basically there was no cars in Ukraine. And the reason for that is because in Ukraine, throughout its history in modern world, nobody could afford anything, including especially cars. There was no cars at all because no electric cars, no ICE cars because people just couldn't afford anything. And also at the same time, like in the United States, nobody cared to develop a public transportation. There's no good public transportation in Ukraine, and there's also no cars. No ICE or electric cars just because nobody has money. So what happens is people are kind of frantically packed into these small yellow buses that look like they're made to deliver bread. People are packed into these small yellow buses that look exactly like bread vans. And then these machines, basically, what I'm trying to say, in Ukraine, and they're still there, these machines are basically one bad pothole away from spontaneous combustion. And they are the major transport utility, So these yellow little bread vans that made for delivering bread that are one pothole away from spontaneous combustion are the major transportation infrastructure in Ukraine. So these half-maintained bread vans go around cities packed with people, and no one has time. Basically, in Ukraine, because there's no cars like in the United States after 2035, there's no public transportations. These yellow bread vans that are one pothole away from spontaneous combustion. They go around cities packed with people. You can't even get in them. So basically, nobody's on time anywhere. Nobody's on time anywhere in Ukraine. And that's exactly what's going to happen that's exactly what's going to happen to the United States. Congratulations, guys.